Okay, folks, welcome to the 2013 Preservation Battle Walk. My name is John Winkleman. I'm a licensed battlefield guide here at Gettysburg. And what we're going to do today, our topic for this preservation walk, is the 1913 reunion. Okay, this was 50 years after the battle. This is 100 years ago this year. Now, of course, if you've been reading anything in the papers, you know that the anniversary this year is going to be something special. The Park Service, the foundation, various groups in town have spent a lot of time, maybe the last 2 years, preparing the various events and activities that are going to occur. Definitely a large event coming up here this July. However, if you look back 100 years at the anniversary of 1913, it was huge. 53,407 Civil War veterans attended that reunion. So it was big. And to house that many people, these fields right out here would be the site of the Great Camp, all right? Now, this whole thing came about, it's kind of the brainchild of a Civil War veteran, General Henry Huidekoper. Now, General Henry Huidekoper was a lieutenant colonel during the American Civil War. He was here at Gettysburg. And on July the 1st, he was wounded in the arm, and his arm would be amputated at St. Francis Catholic Church in town. He survives the amputation in the war, and after the war, he goes on to become a general in the Pennsylvania National Guard. And he figures it's 1913, it's 50 years after the battle, we should have a reunion of the veterans. Now, there had been other reunions here at Gettysburg prior to this. Matter of fact, in 1906, they had a reunion with Webb's Philadelphia Brigade and the veterans of Pickett's Division. And it went off very well. Matter of fact, the veterans of Webb's Brigade returned the sword of General Lewis Armistead to the Virginia veterans at that. And I guess they figured there was such camaraderie, it went over good, nobody got into a fight or anything like that. Huidekoper decides we should do something for the 50th. He brings his idea to the governor of Pennsylvania and explains this would be something we should do, and the governor agreed with him. So in 1909, they establish a commission to look into the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And what they're going to do, they're going to invite representatives from all 48 states and 4 territories to, be the state representative on this commission. Some of the names of these representatives might be very familiar to you people. For example, who would be the representative from Maine? Chamberlain. Got it, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. For New York, we had Daniel Sickles. From Rhode Island, Elijah Hunt Rhodes. And from Minnesota, John Bigelow. If you go down the Wheatfield Road, there's Bigelow's Battery, veteran of the Battle of Gettysburg. In 1910, they started putting things together, the events they wanted to have. And one of the things they put on the schedule was a peace jubilee. And the plan was that on July the 3rd, they would lie the cornerstone of a peace memorial. Unfortunately, when the federal government was appropriating funds for this anniversary, they did not provide any for the memorial, so the peace memorial would have to wait another 25 years till 1938. Now, of course, you're going to have this influx of people. Who is allowed to come? Well, the commission went to the Grand Army of the Republic, the Union veterans, and the United Confederate veterans, and basically the invitation was extended to those men who had an honorable discharge. They would be allowed to come and stay in the camp. Now, if you had a dishonorable discharge, I guess you could still come, but you couldn't go in the camp. At least that was the rule, okay? So now you've got a lot of veterans, a lot of invitations are out there, and pretty soon the numbers start coming in, and this thing is going to be huge. So what they're going to do, they're going to actually get the Gettysburg National Park Service. They're going to get the federal government involved, and actually even the United States Army, the War Department, be involved. Yeah. And what they are going to do is establish a large camp out in these fields. Dan and Teresa, if you could come forward, please. Okay, folks. This here will give you an idea of the size of this camp. Right now, you are standing right about here, along the Emmitsburg Road. This camp will start almost across from the Cadore House. That's where the great tent is located. And this will extend into town. to give you an idea, folks, this is Breckenridge Street. Here's South Street right here, okay? This is Long Lane. Gettysburg Hospital is here today. Here is West Confederate Avenue. There's the McMillan House up on the ridge. So this can give you an idea of the extent of this. 5,000 12-man tents. And of course, if you're going to have that many people, you need water. So in February of 1913, they were digging wells out here to provide water for the veterans. They would have a temporary post office. They would have latrines. They even had a field hospital out here. When they finally start putting everything together, you're going to have 53,407 veterans, about 1,500 U.S. Army personnel to take care of things, 2,200 cooks, 350 Boy Scouts, and members of the press. 57,000 people will be living in that camp out there. Now, if we look at another one, if we could put that away, Dan and Teresa, and we got a panoramic view here. I hope this is the one I want. This is perfect. Okay. These are two panoramic views. These photographs, by the way, are in Pennsylvania at Gettysburg, Volume 3. Now they're taken, this one right here is taken from the old Hancock Tower, or sometimes referred to as the Meade Tower, that actually stood where the old Cyclorama building was, right up there on Cemetery Ridge. So it's a great panoramic view. Here you're looking south. There's Big Round Top in the distance, but if you look off to the west here, there's the Kadoorie House, and there is the Great Tent, okay? And now you're seeing the southern end of the Great Camp. If we look at here, now we are looking west, so we're looking right across this way, and here's the extent of the camp. There's the Great Tent again, and here are all those tents in the field. The monument to the 8th Ohio is right here. That's the monument right back there. So here's the 8th Ohio. Now you can see how far this camp stretches way past that to the outskirts of town and almost up to West Confederate Avenue out there. So this gives you an idea of the size and the complexity of this place right here. What we're going to do now, folks, we're going to walk from this site and we're going to head down by the Kadoorie House, just across the Emmitsburg Road from the Kadoorie House. And what we're going to do is talk about the events that occurred here during the anniversary. Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, right now we are right across from the Kadoorie House. Of course, that house was here at the time of the battle. The barn, though, is not the original one. There was a white barn here in 1863 that was torn down, and they put this new barn on its site. So, but the house is original, was here in 1863. The orchard here was the Kadoorie Orchard. You'll notice we're on a little plateau right about here, and this plateau is where they would put the Great Tent. Like I said, 200 feet wide, 450 feet long, a tent that could sit 13,000 people was right here on this plateau. This had been the southern end of the Great Camp. Now, the first veterans are going to start arriving here on June the 29th. That evening, they will serve their first supper at the camp. Now, they were expecting 6,000 veterans that night. 21,000 showed up. So you can imagine they were a little bit overwhelmed on day one. The reason most of these veterans were probably Pennsylvania boys, because Pennsylvania had just had a state reunion here that concluded on June the 28th. So the Pennsylvanians are here already, and it's probably most of them who were here on the 29th for supper. On June the 30th, they're going to have a dedication of the base of the Virginia Memorial. Out there in the distance is the Virginia Memorial, Robert E. Lee on top, of course, and they will dedicate the base of that monument on June the 30th. Of course, the final dedication will come in 1917 when the bronze figures and the statue of Robert E. Lee is put on the monument. So June the 30th, they had some events. July the 1st, though, will be the opening day. That is Veterans Day, okay? And what they're going to do here at 2 p.m. in this great tent, they'll have the commencement exercise, the big speeches welcoming the people. And one of the persons who's going to be here for that welcoming event would be this man right here. That is General Daniel Sickles, the last surviving Corps commander of either the Union or the Confederate Army here at Gettysburg. And there he is being greeted by Union and Confederate veterans. On July the 2nd, they're going to have what they called Military Day. Here in the great tent, there will be speakers talking about how America should keep its military strong. One man said that the United States should build 2 battleships for every one that Japan builds. Remember, we're on the eve of the First World War. Europe is becoming a tinderbox, and a lot of people are saying we should start maybe ramping up for this one here. So you've got a lot of speeches here on Veterans Day. There's also going to be a number of veteran reunions. 65 units will have reunions here on the battlefield. And we do have another picture. The next one here, thanks, Teresa, is this one here. There's a group of Union veterans. This was their GAR post down here. So you'd have this all over the battlefield as veterans are getting together, having reunions. And of course, there are official events occurring here in the camp and in the great tent. But there's a lot of informal reunions. A lot of times the Union Confederate veterans would walk through the camps talking to people, where were you at, where are you from? And there's even one guy who found the guy that shot him here 50 years ago. The Missouri contingent, though, they had a request. Before they came to Gettysburg, they sent a letter to the mayor of Gettysburg, and they asked him if he could provide some photos of a few good widows or old maids, good housekeepers, but not too young, to go west with them after the reunion. So the mayor of Gettysburg, J.A. Holdsworth, he agreed he would forward them some photos if anybody was interested. This would be Operation Cupid. So, yeah, I guess they were looking for wives. On July the 3rd would be Governor's Day. Now, what's going to happen here in the great tent, a number of governors from the states that are here are going to be giving speeches to their veterans in the great tent. Also, there's going to be a lot more reunions, things like that about the park. Another thing that was going to happen on Governor's Day is they're going to actually walk the fields. They were going to actually have another big party here. And they actually said there was a raid that night. Union troops raided the Confederate camp. So they were still playing games. And remember, the average age of these men is 72 years old, and they're raiding each other, okay? So they're having a good time. There was no outbreaks, any fistfights or anything like that I've come across. However, it was reported that one fellow was arrested in Gettysburg. He was the son of a Confederate veteran, and they arrested him because he was making disparaging remarks about President Abraham Lincoln. So they pulled him off the hoosegow. July the 3rd is going to be, I guess, Civic Day here. And what they're going to do here is actually have some fireworks, more reunions and everything else. And finally, on July the 4th would be National Day. Now, on National Day, what's going to happen is President Woodrow Wilson will come here. Now, Wilson initially decided that he did not want to come to this. He had just been elected president, and he had a policy that he would not leave Washington while Congress was in session. But luckily for him, Congress was going to go on vacation. It was hot. It was July. And on June the 28th, Wilson notified the commission that he would be available to come and make a few remarks here. Now, Wilson might have been a little hesitant about this because he did not want to be compared to Abraham Lincoln. If you're following Abraham Lincoln, that's a tough act to follow. And Wilson was probably worried whatever speech he gave would be compared to his predecessor, okay? But he does come. He gets here at 11 a.m. He arrives by train at the train station. They will bring him by automobile from the town right down here to the great tent. He will come in. He will make a 20-minute speech. They will play the national anthem. He will get back into the automobile and head right back to Gettysburg to the train station, and he is gone. Wilson was here about an hour. He shook no hands, talked to no veterans. He came, he saw, he went, and that was it. So I guess he really didn't want to be compared to Lincoln, and he left. Also on July the 3rd, excuse me, July the 4th, they were going to have a moment of silence. Now, Wilson leaves, but at noontime, there was a 5-minute silence, a solemn period, where everybody stopped talking. There was a hush. In town, the bells in the churches were ringing at the noon hour, and after they were done, the silent period still continued, and off in the distance, they were firing artillery pieces. So in the distance, you hear the boom of artillery as they were honoring the fallen dead with this moment of silence with the artillery booming in the background. Now, what we're going to do now, folks, we're going to kind of head up to the opening in the fence. We're going to go up to Cemetery Ridge and kind of conclude the program up there, kind of show you some more pictures and kind of finish the program up there, and also some more words from President Wilson as well. Okay. Casualties, the Union took 23,000.
Wow. Hey, you. I never get it. Well, that was all over the course of these 3 days.
3 days.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Okay, folks, right now we are on Cemetery Ridge. We are on the angle right here, and an event's going to occur here on July the 3rd, 1913. There's actually going to be a Webb picket flag ceremony right here in the Bloody Angle. The veterans of Webb's Philadelphia Brigade and veterans of Pickett's Division will meet right here and have a flag ceremony at the exact hour of Pickett's charge. 3 p.m. they would meet right here. Also, that same day, there were some dedications going on down at the Pennsylvania Monument. It had been dedicated in 1910. However, the statues on the columns, the one of Lincoln, Curtin, Meade, and such, they didn't go in until April of 1913, so they're having a little dedication ceremony down there for them as well. A lot of people ask, what kind of impact did this have on the town of Gettysburg? Well, Gettysburg in 1913 had a population of 4,500 people. So you can imagine they projected 100,000 people come here. We've seen that over 53,000 veterans were here. They said all the hotels in Hanover, Chambersburg, surrounding areas, they were all booked. You couldn't get a room. And they said actually there was only maybe about 50,000 visitors who were not veterans. I think maybe the idea of all this might have scared some of the crowds away. Something that, who knows, might even happen this year as well. You know, a lot of people don't like big crowds, and that could have happened. They did have to open some spaces at the Lutheran Seminary at Gettysburg College to accommodate some of this overflow as well. But the town was pretty well inundated. They had to put comfort stations throughout the town for the people. There was first aid stations. They had some Boy Scouts out by Cashtown helping people coming in on the Lincoln Highway, you know, for traffic directions and such. So you had a lot of volunteer groups taking part in all of this. Now, during this 3 days, especially the beginning of this anniversary, it was very hot. We're talking over 100 degrees. Super hot temperatures. These men are 72 years old, average age, so you can imagine the heat affected some of them. Over 350 cases of heat exhaustion, 1 case of heat stroke, but with all of this, only 9 veterans died here during the reunion. And they thought, they were amazed because of the temperature. One man said it's amazing there wasn't more of them because it's excessive heat. Also, if you got all these people here, you want some entertainment. So what they did in 1912, they built a cyclorama building on Baltimore Street, over where the Tour Center, the Gettysburg Tour Center sits today. They would put that building in, and what they were going to do is bring to Gettysburg the Boston cyclorama painting. Now that is the painting that is in the Visitor Center today. It was first displayed here at Gettysburg in that new building, and would actually stay in that building to the 1960s. Because in 1960, they started building what they call the new cyclorama building. Of course, that is the building that sat over there for decades and has just been demolished this year. So that was the cyclorama over there. So the Boston cyclorama painting is still here, still on display in the Visitor Center. Of course, it's, as you know, if you're a member of the Friends, that just underwent a $9 million restoration before they put it up. Also, there was a movie. I didn't even know this movie existed. It was a silent film, The Battle of Gettysburg, black and white, and they were showing that in the theater in town. Unfortunately, there are no copies or prints of that movie available today, so we don't really know what it's like. By July the 5th, they were closing down the camp. They were estimating most of the veterans were leaving that day. Some had left actually before events concluded, and the last veteran would be gone by July the 8th, and they would start taking down the camp. Now, of course, this camp out here is going to give some inspiration because 4 years later, the Army will establish Camp Colt out there. That's where they will train the new tank units for the United States Army, and that training will be done by a young Army Captain, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So again, out in those fields that we had just walked there, and if you look across, that is where Camp Colt would be during the First World War. During the Second World War, there will actually be a German POW camp over there as well. So the fields of Pickett's Charge have seen quite a lot of activity other than the Civil War. But I think probably one of the most momentum events that occurred here, and probably something you've read about, was when the Southern veterans decided to come across the fields reenacting Pickett's Charge. And we do have a picture of that right here. Here's some of the old Civil War veterans coming across those fields. Probably a lot different than it was in 1863. Nobody was shooting at them, of course, but they will come up here to the stone wall at the angle, okay? So that pretty much concludes my program today, our battle walk across the fields. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you for coming, taking part in the preservation walk. I know the foundation appreciates your donations, your time, especially you members of the Friends, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you.